You are ready to start.
Sounds good. I want to begin by saying hello and welcome to everybody who's here, whether on this Zoom or joining us on Facebook Live or watching after the fact on our website. We are so excited to bring you our third installment of Zimrah Talks. And it is my absolute joy and delight to introduce you to a new friend of mine, but someone who I think is going to be a very long term friend of mine, Aarón Serfaty. Aarón is a master drummer. He teaches at USC Thornton School of Music. He has toured with people of the likes of Arturo Sandoval, and he is an expert in Cuban music. We're going to be presenting on Friday together. Aarón has put together just an incredible band for us of Cuban musicians, and we'll be bringing our Shabbat liturgy. We're going to be adding a Cuban flavor to it with Aarón's help this coming Friday. But before we do that, I wanted to bring Aarón in to talk to us a little bit about what makes Cuban music special. And because he is a percussionist, we get this really wonderful, exciting take on it because in my opinion, and Aarón, you can tell me if you agree with me, the whole basis of Cuban music and what makes it so special comes from what's happening in the rhythm instruments. So with that, I just want to welcome you and thank you so much for bringing your gifts to our community. And why don't you start off by telling us what it is that you think makes Cuban music so special?
Well, thank you for welcoming me here. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Scott, for making the connection. This is this has been a really fun experience. Um, I love rhythm. I rhythm is in my blood, and I do not have bad circulation, so I'm okay with that. But and I've always been attracted to all kinds of rhythm. Uh, from as far as I remember, from 5 years old, I always wanted to play drums. And then when I was 15, I decided, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And I fought tooth and nail. I fought my dad, I fought my mom, and I won because I'm stubborn. So in Cuban music was always very attractive to me because there were lots of different rhythms and lots of drums of different sounds coming from the drums too, and it makes for a very rich tradition. The the difference between Cuban music and oh, I have a couple of friends joining in. Hi Tom. Hi Tom. Satoshi-san. I can't see you, but I know you're here. Satoshi was a student of mine.
Hey, Aarón.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I'm sorry, I'm doing something, so I
Don't
have
worry
to do
about it.
in visual. Thanks,
That's
Aarón.
okay.
I love you so much.
Bye. So, the African influence is undeniable. Now, the African influence in terms of rhythm is basically the same African influence that made it to North America. The difference is the Spaniards, as brutal as they were, they tended to keep families together, and they also when they allowed the slaves to build drums. So what happens is the slaves start worshiping Catholic images, and so the priests are happy, they have converted the people, and what they're actually doing is worshiping their deities behind Catholic images. That's what's called Santeria. By doing that, it allows them to keep their religion, which is also a huge part of their history. Because if you're familiar with Ifa or Afa or Fa religion, which is the religion that's most widely spread along the sub-Saharan western coast of Africa, it's organized very much like Catholic religion. There's a God creator of everything, then there's the saints, then there are priests and the general public. So the basic organization is the same. So what happens is you have slaves that are allowed to build their drums because they're worshiping Saint Barbara. They're actually worshiping Chango, which is the god of thunder and lightning. Or they're worshiping St. Anthony of Padua, which is Elegua, which is the child, the mischievous one. So the priests are happy, and the slaves are able to keep their religion and their history and their culture alive. They were also allowed, for the most part, to keep family units together. And so that allows oral tradition to be passed from mother to daughter, father to son, which in a way keeps the culture and the history and the music as well.
Well, those things go so much hand in hand, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's nowadays, as we know, religion and culture are like, especially for us Jews, it's a salad. You don't know where culture stops and religion starts, or it goes everywhere, you know. So that's what happens with Cuban music. So they have their bata drums. I will play a video in a minute, which are mainly religious drums. And these are the drums they use to keep their religion, obviously. So, and for the most part, bata drumming was very, very secretive. You could only play them if you were a convert to the religion, and if not, you were not allowed to. Women were not allowed to play the drums because their Ifa, Fa religion involves certain blood sacrifices. And the theory was that menstrual blood could be misconstrued as sacrificial blood, so women were not allowed to play drums. Don't ask me. That was not my idea. But so the religious part of it is extremely important. There's also, so that's one side of it. The other side of it, once they start building their drums, they start playing rumba guaguancó. And rumba guaguancó, rumba Columbia, rumba Yambu, is the kind of music they play after, it's secular music basically.
Right.
It's not religious music, it's secular music, so they play it after the whole day. Like I tell my students, that's their Nintendo. That's their video game, you know, to clear their minds, to talk about the day, they play rumba. So that is the African influence in Cuban music. Then you have the Spanish influence, which is the guitar and old guitar-like instruments. Because when you're on a ship coming here, you're going to be on a ship for 3 months and you don't know if you're going to make it or the Kraken is going to get you. You bring music, and the best instrument to bring is the guitar.
Sure.
It's the easiest one to bring. It's the most popular musical instrument on the planet. Also one of the most badly played, but that I digress.
I'm one of the people who plays it poorly.
No, I didn't say poorly, I said badly. There's a difference there. So there's that influence, and that is what I call the poor Spaniard contribution to Cuban music, to really Latin American music. but since we're talking specifically about Cuba, we'll focus here. So you have, and most of it is, from the south of Spain, which is where the Jews and the Moors and the Catholics are all mixing in Toledo, in all that area. And there's a lot of head singing, which is the Arab way of singing from the minarets and all that stuff. There's also modal harmonies, which are Indian. So you have the gypsies moving from southern India to northern India to Eastern Europe and end up in the south of Spain. So those are the things they're bringing to the Americas, right? And then in Cuba, once they start bringing slaves, they run into the drums, into the hand drums. So it's almost a perfect storm of influences. Add to that later 1700s, 1800s, European music, right? Western European music as we know it, classical music. Then we have a different set of harmonies. Now it's not all modal. Now there are, key centers and modulations and key changes and all that stuff. Move a little forward up to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and you get jazz harmonies.
Right.
And then we get what we know as we end up with the most widely known Cuban influenced kind of music, which is called salsa, which has nothing to do with tomato and cilantro. It's a whole other ballgame. But yes, in general, Cuban music is as rhythmically rich as New Orleans music. The main difference is the drums they used.
Yeah.
In New Orleans, the slaves were not allowed to build drums, so what do they resort to? Military marching drums.
Right.
But the concepts, the idea, the phrasing is all the same. But the sounds are completely different.
Such a beautiful explanation. It's really wonderful. And one thing that I noticed, I think, from what you shared with us, is that while the harmonic and melodic structures may have changed due to some of those outside influences, that the rhythmic structure really stayed consistent. So why don't we, I feel like the video that you have to show us is a great example of some of these rhythms, right?
Absolutely. You will see the bata. Hold on. Let me share the screen. My Zoom chops. Tomasito, how are you doing? Okay. Can you all see this? So before we start, those three drums you see there in a very blurry way, those are bata drums. They are hourglass-shaped drums. They come straight from Nigeria. In Nigeria, there are usually 7 drums. In Cuba, it was reduced to 3. The middle drum is the mother, the iya. The drum on your right is the itotele, which is the father. And then the little drum is the child, which is the okonkolo. The mother is the one that dictates what happens. We all know this, but it's a good reminder. And they are singing, the first part of the video, they are singing in Yoruba, which is the largest ethnic group that was brought to the Americas. So we're talking about the population around Nigeria and certain parts of Ghana. And then they'll start Rumba Guaguancó, and they will sing in Spanish.
Coco, como coribale, un chango, lo mío. Coco, como coribale, un chango, lo mío. A la dola, aquí la dola, guara, un bao chire. Un llaman loro por un oca mei mei, por un oca mei mei, guolo tu mare. A to fingo yo, agua que te lepe, oh que te huela ve, oh patele el agua loriza, oh patele el agua loriza, oh patele el agua la to, y lupo guaye, oh pavoso, siete rayos me lleva 7 leguas, 7 leguas Bongo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7
Digo,
leguas.
7 leguas Bongo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
Oh, 7 leguas Bongo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
Oh, yo 7 leguas Bongo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
Ah, rayo pato un Congo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
Arriba para abajo ponte, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
7 rayos allá la Pama, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
Oh, yo 7 leguas Congo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
7 leguas Congo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
Chango, Cabiecileo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
Oh, yo 7 leguas Congo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7 leguas.
A rayo pato un Congo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva 7
7
leguas.
leguas Congo, 7 leguas Congo.
7 rayos me lleva 7
7
leguas.
leguas Congo, 7 leguas Congo.
7 rayos me lleva
7 leguas, 7 leguas Congo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me lleva
7 leguas Congo, 7 leguas, 7 leguas.
7 rayos me
A
lleva
rayo para un Congo, 7 leguas Congo, 7 leguas.
7 rayos. Okay, so you get the idea, right? And you see the element of call and response between the soloist and the choir, which is what we're going to do tomorrow. You all have to sing.
Yes. Very important. Yes.
Yes. So, and once you study it a little bit, you start hearing the different calls. And you and Scott probably heard the changing of the calls because that's what we trained in Ghanaian music, which is the same. The calls are from the drums. As a side note, all the calls during the Civil War were drumming calls. All the calls were played on snare drums. The Diana and all that stuff came later. During the Civil War, there was a drummer that would call wake up, breakfast, attack, retreat, and everything. All the calls came from drummers. So it's basically the same thing. See how it's we're circling the same drainage.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a language going on between
Yes.
between those drummers and you know you said the mother's calling, and she's telling them when to do different things, when to do different rhythmic patterns.
Yes, when to change and when. Now also the beauty of bata drumming is that it has 6 pitches, 6 very clear pitches.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a melodic content to the rhythms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the moment one of those melodies is off, then the whole thing collapses.
Yeah.
So just because they're drums, don't think they don't have a melody to them.
Very true. Yeah. Good reminder. Good reminder.
Yeah.
So I definitely want people to be able to hear you play.
Of course.
And I know you've got you know spent so much time making a beautiful setup there for us to see what you do. You know, at some point, I also want people to hear a little bit of your story because, you know, it's really fascinating. Everyone here hearing your accent and seeing your name might think that you are from Cuba, but I know
Yes.
differently. And so I'd love for you to share your story.
Of course.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
you want me to share my story or play first?
Why don't you play a little bit first, and then give us a little bit of your story? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, great.
So this instrument, I don't know if you can see it there, it's called the clave. And this pretty much rules every every Cuban influenced music anywhere. So it's basically a pattern that we all know, we've all played before. Bo Diddley bought a house with that groove. So it's just two sticks, one is hollowed out, and you hit it, you kind of cup your hand so you have more resonance. And that is probably the most important one. Sometimes it's not even played, but because all the patterns adapt to it, it's always there. It's permeating all of the music. The next important drum would be the bongo, this one. Tiny drum. I believe it comes from Morocco, because the Moroccan ceramic drums are the only ones I've seen played in pairs. There's no two drums that I know of in Japanese culture or Chinese culture or Korean culture. There's no two drums. There are two drums in India, but they're not attached to each other, the tabla. The mrinangam is two-headed, the bata are double-headed, so I like to think that. And they have, it's a very important instrument. For the longest time, it was the only drum in Spanish music influenced Cuban music. So that's the basic pattern, and you will see me playing that a lot tomorrow. Then we have, so this is Northern African influence. This is Sub-Saharan Western Coast of Africa influence. These resemble, and Kerith and Scott, you would know, you would remember the sogo, yes? In Ghanaian music. So this resembles that. It's kind of the same setup. And you create different tones. You play open tones, and then by leaving your hand on the drum, you create what we call a slap tone. You can hear the difference, yes? The basic pattern started here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they started, of course, it started evolving. And we arrived to this one. So as you can see, you get many different sounds with that. Also, side note, how many of you are familiar with I Love Lucy, the original? That's it. And the congas were doing, they were doing the most basic one. Now it's funny to think that in 1952 the highest rating for a sitcom was led by a Cuban man and a red-haired woman. It seems like we have devolved in terms of stardom, if you will. Anyway, so these are the African influence. These 4 drums, 3 really, Bongo, and these 2. Now, here's the European influence, and it's called, these are the timbales. Now, side note, pretty much all drums are played high to low, high to low, so the opposite of a piano. Timbal is the French word for timpani. So these are set up like a French timpani, low to high. And then, so this is the Western European influence. And you can play on the side of the drum and play with a bare hand on the other one. So that's the basic pattern. So everything together, not everything together, but it sounds something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's some of the stuff we're gonna do tomorrow. So you will hear all these 3 in action like that.
It's great, Aarón. You know, when we had our rehearsal earlier this week, and one of the things that I was noticing about your playing, you know, I played with a lot of percussionists throughout the years, and you're right in the pocket. You are not playing before, you're not playing behind the beat. It's just you are right in the center. And is that your style? Is that part of playing Cuban music? Where's that come from?
It is a natural tendency, to be sure, because when I play funk or when I play rock or when I play jazz, I tend to be in the center of the beat. But it's most obvious when I play Cuban music and Brazilian music, because that music requires you to drive without being obnoxious, without being overwhelming. So the only way you're going to do that is to actually commit to playing at the center of the beat. But I can't tell you that's something I studied. That just it's from in your listening to the music.
Yeah. Well, it is. All of you, I hope you get to come or watch online, because when you hear Aarón playing with the band, I mean, I had a hard time singing because I really just wanted to listen to them. So, yeah, they're wonderful. So, yeah. So, Aarón, I think now's a great time for you to tell us a little bit about your history and how you found your place doing what you do, and especially with the emphasis on Latin music and Cuban music in particular.
Okay, so let's backtrack for a bit. My dad was a politician. He was also a political activist, and he had a recording studio and a record manufacturing plant in the 50s in Venezuela. But he was also an anti-dictatorship. So the government burned his record company twice, burned it to the ground, and he was in prison for 2.5 years. After he came out of prison, he became the first Jewish senator in Venezuelan history, at least according to the Asociación Israelita de Venezuela, which is the biggest organization that tracks the Jewish population in Venezuela. So there was, and he revived, not the recording studio, but he revived the record company. So there was always music around the house, always, and it was mostly Latin music. Then, you know, I love listening to baseball games on the radio when I'm 11 years old. Don't ask me. I've been an old soul all my life. And the music they're playing in between innings is Cuban music. And then I found an Oscar Peterson album with Milt Jackson and Ray Brown and Louis Hayes, and I fell in love with jazz. So where am I going to go study jazz? I'm not going to go to Ecuador and study jazz. I had to come here. So that's how I ended up here. But being from Venezuela...
Well, we're really
also,
glad you're here.
Oh, me too. Especially now. Being from Venezuela, Venezuela has a geographical position that's privileged in a way. Because we have borders with Brazil, we have borders with Colombia, and we also, because of the oil companies, we had a huge American influence, and we also had Cuban influence, because we're at the top of South America, so we have the Caribbean, so we had calypso, we had reggae, we had Cuban music, we have music from Puerto Rico, all these on the radio. We're listening to Earth, Wind and Fire and Miriam Makeba and Michael Jackson and, you know, Noel Petro from Colombia, the whole thing. So me, I fell in love with the drum set. That's the love of my life. I flirt with these girls over here, but that's my wife. And and that is the true American instrument. That was an American creation. Not the banjo, not, you know, all that stuff comes straight from Africa, but the conglomerate of marching military drums played by one person is an American invention. So I had to come here and play that. But I thought I had to learn any style of music that had drums in it. So my cassette tapes were a mishmash of everything. There was Frank Sinatra, and then there was Celia Cruz, and then next thing is Benny Moré, and all these things. Count Basie, you name it. It's a bit schizophrenic if you ask me, but I wouldn't change it. I just, you know, it's music. To me, all of it is music, and if there are drums in it, I'm so very happy. So anyway, fast forward to when I'm 27 years old. I'm married. I have a kid. And I decided, okay, I'm going nowhere here. I'm not evolving. I'm playing a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm not learning jazz the proper way. I need to move and learn to the States and learn to play jazz. So I wanted to go to New York. I didn't know anyone in New York, and I had 3 friends here in LA. So I said, LA it is. Actually, my compadre, Otmaro Ruiz, a great piano player, who was my first call for this gig though, and he couldn't do it. Otmaro kept calling me. He would call, he was here already. He's like, you have to be here. You have to be in LA. You have to come here. You have to come here. So I finally caved in. And my now ex-wife and I moved here the day after our son turned 1 year old. It was the most bipolar piñata you can imagine. because it was a celebration and everybody was crying because we were leaving the next day. It was a mess. But yeah, so that's how I got here. And being here, there's a certain expectation that because I speak Spanish and I have an accent, I'm gonna play all this music. I just happened to. But there was that expectation that I was able to play with Arturo Sandoval because of it. And I was able to play with Arturo because I knew jazz. He's also a jazz trumpet player.
Right.
So it was jazz and Cuban. I played with Sergio Mendes, which is a combination of jazz and Brazilian music and pop music. And I was able to play with him because I know the languages, the different languages, the little idiosyncrasies that belong to all the styles. I ended up playing with John Anderson, the singer from Yes. He went on vacation to Puerto Rico and fell in love with Latin music. So he put a whole Latin band, and we were giving, Owner of a Lonely Heart, and what's the other one? Roundabout. We were giving it a different treatment. So, and we toured all over South America. We went to Mexico and Panama and Brazil and Chile. It was really fun. But because I knew where the music was coming from, I could actually adapt and bring the Latin element to it and keep the rock essence of it. So all the gigs I've ever gotten is because I have a little bit of,
I'm so glad I asked. You have such a fascinating story. And, I have a question for you because that comes out of my own experience.
Yes.
So as a singer, when I was studying music, and of course I still study, my voice teacher. But when I was a young singer studying, my teachers, because I wanted to learn how to sing in multiple styles. I studied classical music. I also studied jazz. I also studied popular singing. And my teachers would always tell me, you can't learn, you have to stop doing that. You have to focus and learn one style. And I didn't, which actually was great for me because who knew I was going to become a cantor where I actually need to use all of those styles. And it sounds like you also just kept learning all those styles. Was there a point that anyone said to you, you need to choose one, or that never happened to you?
No, that never happened to me. And I would have not listened to that. No, because like I said, I love that instrument. I love the drums. So whatever has drums in it, I'm happy playing.
Yeah.
There's a picture of me in a heavy metal band in Venezuela. It was a heavy metal drum.
That's great.
Long hair, bandana, the whole thing.
Oh, that's terrific.
It's music to me. So why shouldn't I play music?
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. Agree with you more. So I want to make sure that the people who've joined us on Zoom here, if anyone has any questions that you want to ask, now's the time to do that. And Hannah, if there's anyone on Facebook that writes a question in the chat, you can share those with us as well. But just to open it up, Merle, go ahead.
So on the video, the drums, a lot of the drums had like what looked like jewels attached to it, or so when you were saying that the drumming was like messaging, do those jewels or things hanging off the drums have any influence on the message sent?
No, the rattling is a very desirable sound. The rattling sound on drums. They in the marimbas of Madagascar, they add dirt to the resonators, so they buzz. So the buzzing sound is a very desirable sound. In generally speaking, so they're adding those. That's called chaworo, and they're just basic bells. They're only added to the mother, to the iya. The other two don't have it, but that drum has it, and it's just that means that it's been sanctified. So it's a religious drum.
Okay.
It has gone through the ceremony, but it's just a sound thing. It doesn't change the calls in any way.
Okay, I'll be listening tomorrow night from New Orleans. I can't wait to hear this.
Oh,
Great.
that's gonna be fun. Oh,
Well,
you're in the
Well, when
right
you
spot.
asked your question, it was making me think about, how the Torah, we have the
Rimonim.
rimonim on them. Yeah, that make that also that,
Zing.
it's a higher toned buzz, but maybe that for whatever reason is some sort of language of holiness. That buzz.
In,
So.
And walk
in-
around with the Torah
In
again.
Korea, they have a bunch of bells that are supposed to kick off evil spirits. And it's a bell sound. I actually bought a box of them because I love the sound of them.
That's great. Risa, did you have a question?
Well, kind of. I'm not a musician, and drums have always spoken to me. But what I've been noticing, and my husband laughs at me all the time, the drums talk to me when they're in the background of things like Law and Order or FBI. They talk to me. They tell me what's going to happen. And I love it. And there's a certain sound that says we're coming through the climax and everything. I always pointed out to Stanley, there's enough to listen to the drums. But I love drumming. And
So,
I'm looking forward to tomorrow night.
have you tried playing?
No way.
No. But no, I'm dead serious. Have you tried a drum?
No, just the tombo. They call them in Israel. The
Oh, the tombek?
yeah. But
Yeah, no. So tomorrow, Kerith, please remind me. She's coming on stage after the gig, and she's gonna play some drum.
I love it.
Because I need you to play. If they're talking to you, if they're speaking to you, you need to listen. You need to talk back to them.
that would be crazy fun.
That would be fantastic.
As long as I don't have to sing when you tell me that I have to
Don't
sing,
worry about it.
like it.
I told Kerith she wanted me to sing, and I told her, her job is on the line if she makes me sing. Because I'm dead. They're gonna fire him for having me sing. It's disgusting.
I guess Lisa and I are channeling this drum music because I have the same feeling. A few months ago, our youngest granddaughter started taking drum lessons, and I'm the only one out of all the family and friends that hear her. I don't mind going with her to her lessons because the sound has me bopping all over the studio.
Great, that's great. And I notice also, Kerith, that the drummers that are playing on Erev Shabbat, most of them use the bells on their ankles. And I love it when they're tapping and making music with their whole body while they're drumming. I love it. I love it. And what's that drum called? I always forget. It looks like a single piece of metal, and it's got sounds on it that are marked with what the key is, and the drummer can
A
play
steel drum.
Oh, steel drum.
Mm-hmm.
that nice one that one of the women uses all the time when she's playing on Zimrah Talks. So I love it.
So the drums are speaking to you. That's the other thing. Drums speak to you at a visceral level. You're not thinking, oh, yeah, it's 120 beats per minute. It kind of syncs up with my heart. I should be moving to it. None of that happens. It's not intellectual. It's visceral. So you immediately start moving, and you don't know why. The drum, I'm going to get hippie for a minute. Just hear me out. Hear me out. This is my CalArts days talking to you. The first thing you hear is rhythm. When you're in your mother's womb,
Right.
the first thing you hear is her heart. The second thing you hear is a polyrhythm. It's your heart and her heart. It's like, okay. So rhythm is visceral. It's absolutely, there's nothing intellectual about it.
That's good.
So that's why the drums are speaking to you.
You know, Aarón, it's so interesting because Reform Judaism has gone through these different waves of how we want to approach worship. And there was a period of time where our worship was completely intellectualized and almost, and not even our worship, our study as well, was everything was, you know, in the mind. It was almost as if, like, you know, our bodies were created solely as a means to, like, transport our brains around. um, and that, well, I love the intellectual endeavor. It really speaks to me. I also feel like when I come to synagogue, I'm actually looking for something different. I'm looking for that visceral response, right? That my spirituality has to speak to me, not just on an intellectual level, but actually even more so for me, in a way to my whole self, including my body. And so what we're doing with our music in the synagogue at this period in time is really, I feel, integrating that visceral response, and that the way that we connect to one another in community and connect to our whatever, however we envision God or deity or whatever that is for us, that it can't just be here, that it has to be with our whole selves and with our kishkas, right? So I love how you phrase that for us, and then also to think about how rhythm really is a connector for us that allows us to feel it in our bodies and to express it through our bodies as well, that we can express everything that we're coming together for, not just here, and not just with our voices, but with our entire being.
That's the whole point. That's the beauty of music. That's what music does to people in general. I mean, it's not the taming of the lion thing. That's fine. That's cute and all that. But I was listening on the radio on KUSC the other day. Ravel's Bolero. I've heard it 1,700 million times. This particular version is a little slower than usual. So I said, interesting. Where's this guy going with this? Here comes the end. They hit the coda. It's bass drum comes in. I start tearing up. It's like, hold on a second. No. It's just a bass drum. What's wrong with me? I'm being hormonal here. I'm getting old. I immediately downloaded on my phone and I listened top to bottom again. And again, I tear up on the bass drum. And definitely, this is completely wrong of me. I go home, I talk to my girlfriend, I played it for her. She looked at me and started crying. We had that kind of emotional response to one bass drum note. Granted, it's the greatest bass drum note I've ever heard in my life. Unbelievable. We went on the internet. We looked up who were the percussionists on that recording, who was the director, where he came from, the whole thing. It's a 1982 recording of the Philadelphia Orchestra with Riccardo Muti. And the assistant principal percussionist was Alan Abel, and he was an inventor and an incredible percussionist. But he was the one playing the bass drum. And I'm speechless. I haven't wanted to listen to it again, just so I don't start bawling. But that's the kind of visceral reaction all art really should provoke. If it's love or if it's disgust, it should be intense. You should not look at a piece of art and go, what? That does not exist. Right. So when it comes to music, which is what I do for a living and which is the thing I love the most, I want to create that. I want to be able to communicate that visceral reaction, to provoke that visceral reaction. So that's why I commit to the groove. It's like, I'm not, no frills. This is not about me. This is about the music. This is about giving people an emotional experience.
Yeah, well, that's so well said because, you know, there's something very intense about bringing things down and moving sometimes away from virtuosity, right? And in your language, committing to the groove.
Yeah, it's what does the music need?
Yeah.
It needs my commitment to this particular element. That's what I'm gonna do. That the music needs a little more, fine. As long as if you're listening to what the music wants you to play, you're fine. The moment you come at it with an agenda or with things like, oh yeah, I've been practicing my paradiddles and so I'm gonna use them. That's it. It lays there for all to see.
Well,
So that's the whole thing. And Cuban music, because it's so rich in rhythm, it's perfect. It makes you want to dance. It makes you want to sing. It was funny. I did on a side note, I did a tour in 1987, and we were in Germany. And we were playing with this Venezuelan singer. Her name is Soledad Bravo, and she did a couple of Cuban influenced albums, and we used to play some Venezuelan music and some, a little bit of everything. But for me, it was shocking. We're playing, we're grooving hard, it sounds amazing, and the audience, the whole audience are like, no, get out. Thankfully, there were always a couple of Argentinian, Venezuelan, Chileans, Peruvians that got up and danced. It's like, okay, so we're getting to them. But watching a bunch of people just closing their eyes while you're grooving is traumatic, to say the least. It's like, no, get up and dance, please.
Oh. Well, we hope we can provide people grooving along with you on Friday. I know so. I will be. And I just want to thank you so much for spending time with us today.
It's my pleasure.
For our rehearsal, and so looking forward to being together tomorrow. And I hope you'll be back many times.
I hope so too. I really hope so too.
Aarón, thank you.
Any other questions?
So much.
Just make sure that you keep the video going tomorrow night so that we can see Risa on the Bima.
Oh, yes. If not, I'll video it on my phone and I'll send it to you.
Okay. This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been
my pleasure. It's my absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining us for your lunch, and hope to see you all soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hag Sameach.
Hag Sameach.
Hag Sameach.
See you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Special hello to Barbara Levin.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.